They say money can't buy happiness, but I learned it can buy something far more valuable: freedom from the people who never believed you deserved either. I grew up in a house in Lexington, Massachusetts, where love was measured in trophies and report cards, and I never seemed to have the right currency. My parents' affection had a clear exchange rate, and my brother Alex had cornered the market since the day he was born. 2 years older than me, he was their golden child, their investment in social capital, their retirement plan wrapped in a Harvard acceptance letter. Our house looked perfect from the outside, a colonial with white shutters and a manicured lawn that screamed middle-class success. Inside, it was a museum dedicated to Alex's achievements. The living room walls were a shrine to his soccer trophies, debate medals, and honor roll certificates. My single science fair ribbon, the one I'd won for developing a miniature solar panel system in 8th grade, was tucked behind a photo of Alex shaking hands with the governor at some leadership conference. I remember the day I won that science fair like it was yesterday. I'd spent months perfecting my project, staying up late to test different configurations, documenting every failure and breakthrough. When they called my name for first place at the state level, my hands shook as I accepted the ribbon. I searched the audience for my parents' faces, finding only empty seats. They were at Alex's basketball practice, the semifinal game that couldn't be missed. That night at dinner, I tried to share my victory. My mother glanced at the ribbon briefly before turning to Alex. "How was practice, sweetheart? Coach Johnson must be thrilled about making it to semifinals." My father didn't even look up from his plate. "Sophia, pass the salt," was all he said. I set my ribbon on the counter, where it stayed until the cleaning lady moved it behind the photo frame weeks later. The pattern was set early. Alex needed new cleats for soccer? Of course, only the best would do. I needed a graphing calculator for advanced math? Maybe for your birthday, which meant never. Alex wanted to attend a prestigious summer camp? They took out a loan. I asked to join the robotics club that required a $50 fee. Money's tight this month, Sophia. But I had one person who saw me, really saw me. Grandma Beatrice lived 40 minutes away in Worcester, in a modest apartment filled with books and the smell of lavender tea. She was sharp as a tack, a former accountant who'd worked her way up in a male-dominated field when women were expected to fetch coffee, not balance ledgers. Every other Sunday, when my parents dropped me off for what they considered obligatory visits while they took Alex to his travel team games, Grandma B and I would sit at her kitchen table, and she'd teach me about compound interest and investment strategies. "Money isn't about greed, Sophia," she'd say, her weathered hands sketching out graphs on notebook paper. "It's about choices. When you have it, you get to choose your life instead of life choosing for you." She turned financial literacy into a game. We'd pick stocks from the newspaper and track them, calculating what our imaginary portfolios would be worth. She taught me about municipal bonds, index funds, and the magic of dollar-cost averaging. While other kids my age were learning algebra, I was understanding PE ratios and dividend yields. More than the knowledge, she gave me something my parents never did: undivided attention and unconditional belief in my potential. The December I turned 16, everything changed. Grandma B had a stroke while making her morning tea. The neighbor found her 3 hours later when she didn't answer for their weekly grocery trip. By the time I got to the hospital, machines were breathing for her. My parents came, eventually, after Alex's college interview at Yale. She died 2 days later, holding my hand while my parents discussed Alex's admission chances in the hallway. Her last words to me were barely a whisper: "Choose yourself, sweetheart. Always choose yourself." The will reading was a month later, in a stuffy law office that smelled like old leather and disappointment. Grandma B had left her entire estate to me, $50,000. Not a fortune by some standards, but to a 16-year-old girl who'd been told her entire life she wasn't worth investing in, it was everything. My mother's face went through several shades of red when the lawyer read the bequest. "There must be some mistake," she said. Surely she meant for it to be divided between both grandchildren. "No mistake," the lawyer assured her. "Mrs. Beatrice Vance was very specific. The entire sum goes to Sophia, to be held in trust until she turns 18. The ride home was silent until we pulled into our driveway. Then the explosion came. "You manipulated her," my mother accused, whirling on me in the kitchen. "All those visits, pretending to care about her boring financial talk. You played on an old woman's loneliness. She was lonely because you never visited." I shot back, years of suppressed anger bubbling up. "You dumped me there like I was a burden while you cheered Alex on at every single game, every debate, every meaningless achievement." My father, typically conflict avoidant, tried to play mediator. "Let's all calm down. Sophia, you need to think about what's fair here. Alex has graduate school coming up. Harvard Business School isn't cheap." "Then maybe he should have visited his grandmother more than twice a year," I said coldly. Alex, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "You're seriously going to keep all that money, after everything Mom and Dad have done for you?" I almost laughed. "What exactly have they done for me, Alex? Buy me your hand-me-down laptop while you got a new MacBook? Make me take the bus to school while they drove you to private SAT tutoring? Oh wait, I know. They gave me the incredible gift of making me invisible in my own home. "You're being dramatic," my mother said, her favorite dismissal of my feelings. "We love you both equally." "No," I said quietly. "You love Alex. You tolerate me." The truth hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Nobody denied it because they couldn't. The evidence was in every family photo where I stood slightly apart, every dinner conversation that revolved around Alex's future, every time they forgot my school events but memorized his schedule down to the minute. From that day forward, the dynamics shifted. They couldn't force me to share the money, but they could make me pay in other ways. Suddenly, I was expected to contribute to groceries from my part-time job. My college conversations consisted of community college brochures left pointedly on my bed. Meanwhile, they refinanced the house to ensure Alex could graduate from Harvard debt-free. I didn't care anymore. I had Grandma B's voice in my head and her money waiting for me. I threw myself into my studies, maintaining a perfect GPA while working 20 hours a week at a local accounting firm. My boss, impressed by my knowledge, let me shadow the senior accountants and learn far more than any classroom could teach. When I turned 18, I took control of my inheritance and immediately put it to work. While my classmates were picking prom dresses, I was researching value investments and teaching myself options trading. I turned that 50,000 into 70 by the time I graduated high school. My acceptance to UMass Amherst came with a full academic scholarship. My parents' reaction was predictable. "State school?" My mother sniffed. "Well, I suppose it's appropriate for your circumstances." Alex, newly admitted to Wharton's MBA program, smirked. "Hey, there's nothing wrong with being realistic about your limitations." I packed my secondhand Toyota Corolla and drove myself to college, leaving behind a family that had never really been mine. At UMass, I found my tribe. Ambitious kids who'd clawed their way up without silver spoons. I studied finance and economics, working 3 jobs to avoid touching my growing investment account. Coffee shop at 5 a.m., tutoring in the afternoon, data entry at night. My roommate thought I was crazy, but I was building something. By senior year, my portfolio had grown to 200,000 through a combination of aggressive investing and a lucky bet on a biotech startup. I was also exhausted, running on 4 hours of sleep and sheer determination. That's when I got the internship that changed everything. Citadel, one of the most prestigious hedge funds in the world, rarely recruited from state schools. But my professor, a former Wall Street veteran who'd retired to academia, made a call. "I have a student you need to meet," he told his old colleague. "She thinks about markets like she was born to them." The internship was in Chicago, 1,000 miles from everything I'd known. I showed up to my first day in my only suit, a polyester blend from Target, surrounded by Ivy League kids in designer clothes. They looked at me like I'd wandered in by mistake. By the end of the summer, I was outperforming half the full-time analysts. They offered me a job before I graduated. Starting salary, 150,000 plus bonuses. I accepted on the spot, then sat in my car and cried. Not from joy, exactly, but from a complex mix of vindication and grief. I'd proven I was worth investing in, but the people who should have believed in me first never would. I threw myself into the work with the same intensity I'd applied to everything else. 80-hour weeks were standard, 100-hour weeks during earnings season. While Alex was planning his wedding to a senator's daughter, leveraging his Harvard MBA into a cushy corporate job, I was building complex financial models and identifying market inefficiencies. By 25, I was the youngest senior analyst in my division. By 28, I ran my own portfolios. By 30, I'd saved enough to do what I'd always dreamed of, start my own fund. Vance Capital launched with $10 million under management, most of it my own money. I focused on sustainable technology and renewable energy, sectors the old guard dismissed as trendy. Within 2 years, I was managing $100 million. By my 32nd birthday, my personal net worth hit $25 million. Through all of this, I maintained the fiction with my family. I told them I worked in financial services, which they interpreted as some back-office role. I drove a Honda Civic to family gatherings and lived in what they assumed was a studio apartment. The truth was, I owned a penthouse in Boston's Seaport District and had a garage full of cars I rarely drove, preferring my bike or the T. The act was exhausting, but some part of me needed to keep playing the role they'd cast me in, the disappointing daughter who'd never amount to much. Maybe I was waiting for them to see me without the money, to value me for who I was. Or maybe I was just a coward, afraid to face their reaction when they learned the truth. Daniel changed that. I met him at a charity gala I'd been obligated to attend as a major donor. He was an architect, talented and passionate about sustainable design. We bonded over our shared vision of a better future, talking until the venue staff kicked us out at 2 a.m. He didn't care about my money. When he found out about it on our 5th date, his first question was, "Why do you hide it from your family?" "Because they never saw me as worthy of success," I admitted, "and part of me is afraid that if they know, they'll only see my worth in dollar signs." "Then they don't deserve to know you at all," he said simply. But he also challenged me. "You can't live split between 2 worlds forever, Sophia. The stress will eat you alive. He was right. The mask was becoming heavier each year, and I was tired of pretending. When Thanksgiving rolled around and my mother called with her annual guilt trip about family obligations, I decided it was time. "I'm bringing someone," I told her. "Oh?" Her voice perked up with interest. "What does he do?" "He's an architect." "How wonderful! Alex will be so pleased to have someone accomplished to talk to." Of course, even my boyfriend was only valuable in relation to Alex. I hung up and turned to Daniel. Last chance to back out. "Not a chance," he said. "I want to see where you came from. It'll help me understand you better." The drive to Lexington was quiet. Daniel held my hand as I navigated familiar streets that felt like they belonged to someone else's life. When we pulled up to my childhood home, Alex's new Audi RS7 was already in the driveway, gleaming in the November Sunday. "Nice car," Daniel commented. "Anniversary gift from our parents," I said. "They co-signed the loan." His squeeze of my hand said everything. Inside, nothing had changed. The shrine to Alex's achievements had expanded to include his wedding photos, his Harvard MBA, his corporate headshots. My parents greeted Daniel with enthusiasm that they'd never shown for me. "An architect! How accomplished!" my mother gushed. "Alex, come meet Sophia's boyfriend." Alex appeared, looking every inch the successful executive in his cashmere sweater and designer jeans. He shook Daniel's hand with the practiced grip of someone who'd taken classes on power dynamics. "Great to meet you. What firm are you with?" As they talked, I faded into the background, the invisible daughter once again. My mother bustled around the kitchen, preparing Alex's favorite foods. My father showed Daniel his golf clubs, asking if he played, while Alex dominated the conversation with stories about his latest promotion. "Senior Vice President of Strategic Initiatives," he announced. "Youngest in company history." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," my mother beamed. "We're so proud." I helped set the table, noticing they'd given Daniel and me the wobbling chairs while Alex and his wife Madison got the sturdy ones. Small slights that added up to a clear message. You matter less. Dinner was the same dance I'd performed for years. Alex held court while my parents hung on his every word. His plans to buy a house in Wellesley, his thoughts on market trends, his vacation plans to the Maldives. When Daniel tried to include me in the conversation, asking about my work, my mother cut him off. "Sophia does something with data entry, very stable. We always told her to find something secure." "Actually," Daniel started. But I touched his arm, shaking my head slightly. "Not yet." After dinner, my mother insisted on showing Daniel photo albums, all featuring Alex's milestones. I escaped to the kitchen, loading the dishwasher like I had 1,000 times before. Through the window, I could see the backyard where I'd built my first lemonade stand, calculating profit margins at age 7 while Alex played video games inside. Still the helper, I see. I turned to find Alex leaning against the doorframe, wine glass in hand. "Someone has to clean up," I said. "Madison doesn't do dishes. Says it ruins her manicure." He laughed like this was charming instead of insufferable. "Your boyfriend seems nice. Very earnest. How'd you meet?" "At an event." "What kind of event does a data entry clerk go to?" There was something in his tone, a probing quality I didn't like. "Just a work thing." He studied me over his wine glass. "You know, it's funny. Madison's cousin works at Fidelity. She mentioned seeing someone who looked exactly like you at the Mandarin Oriental last month. Some big finance conference. But that couldn't be right, could it?" My hands stilled on the dishwasher. "Must be a doppelganger." "Must be." He took another sip. Though she swore she heard someone call her Sophia Vance. "Even said you were wearing a Cartier watch." Can you imagine? Before I could respond, my mother called us back to the living room for coffee and dessert. I was saved from Alex's interrogation but knew he wouldn't let it go. He'd always been competitive, but only when he thought there was a competition. We gathered in the living room, Daniel and I relegated to the small love seat with the broken spring. Madison perched on Alex's lap in the good armchair, her massive engagement ring catching the light. My parents had given them $10,000 toward their wedding. For my college graduation, I'd gotten a card. "So, Sophia," Madison chirped in her affected accent, "Alex tells me you're very practical. That's so admirable. Not everyone can accept their limitations." Daniel's hand found mine, squeezing in warning. But I was done. 3 decades of swallowing their condescension had finally reached its limit. "Yes, I've always been practical," I agreed. "It's why I live below my means." "Below your means?" Alex laughed. "What means? Last I heard you were making barely enough to afford Boston rent." "You heard wrong." Something in my tone made the room go quiet. My mother set down her coffee cup with a nervous clink. "Sophia, what's gotten into you?" she asked. "This isn't like you." "No," I agreed. "It's not. The real me would have stood up for herself years ago. The real me would have demanded to be seen instead of accepting scraps of attention. The real me would have told you exactly what I thought of your favoritism. Favoritism? My father finally spoke. We've treated you both equally. Equally? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Should I list the differences? Alex got a car for his 16th birthday. I got a bus pass. Alex got SAT tutoring, private college counselors, and a fully funded education. I got community college brochures and a suggestion to be realistic. Alex got your time, your attention, your pride. I got to watch from the sidelines. You're being dramatic, my mother said, her go-to dismissal. Am I? Name one of my achievements. Just one. Silence. I'll help you, I continued. State science fair winner, valedictorian, full academic scholarship, summa cum laude. Any of this ringing a bell? My mother's face flushed. Of course we remember. We're proud of everything you've accomplished. Really? What did I study in college? More silence. Finance and economics, with a minor in mathematics. I graduated at the top of my class. Not that any of you attended the ceremony. Alex had his white coat ceremony that day, my father said defensively. Of course he did. I stood up, suddenly exhausted by the whole charade. There was always something more important. Always. At least we gave you a stable home, my mother said. We sacrificed so much. For Alex, I finished. You sacrificed for Alex. I was just the collateral damage. Alex stood too, his face red. You've always been jealous. Always played the victim. Maybe if you'd tried harder, achieved more. I own $100 million hedge fund. The words dropped into the room like a bomb. Everyone froze. What? My mother's voice was barely a whisper. Vance Capital. We manage investments in sustainable technology and renewable energy. My personal net worth is approximately $25 million. I live in a penthouse in the seaport. I drive a Tesla when I drive at all. I've been featured in Forbes, Bloomberg, and the Wall Street Journal. And I did it all without a penny from you, without your faith, without your love. Alex pulled out his phone, frantically Googling. His face went through several shades as he read. This can't be real. It's real. I pulled out my own phone, showing them my company's website, every bit of it. You lied to us, my mother gasped. All these years you lied. I told you I worked in financial services. You assumed the rest because you couldn't imagine me being successful. Why? My father looked genuinely bewildered. Why hide this? Because I wanted, just once, for you to be proud of me without knowing about the money. To see me as accomplished, worthy, enough. But you never did. Even now, you're not proud. You're angry that I didn't share my success with you. Family helps family, Alex said through gritted teeth. Do you know how much we've struggled? The student loans, the mortgage. You mean the mortgage on your $1 million condo? The student loans for your Ivy League degrees that mom and dad helped pay for? That struggle? While you sat on millions. He was shouting now. Mom and dad took out a second mortgage to help us with the wedding. They're pushing back retirement, and you're living in a penthouse? They chose to do that. Just like they chose to invest everything in you while telling me to be realistic about my limitations. Madison, who'd been silent through all this, finally spoke. You could have helped. What kind of person hoards wealth while their family suffers? The kind who was never treated like family to begin with, Daniel said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken during the entire confrontation. The kind who learned early that her worth to you was negligible, so she built her own. Who asked you? Alex turned on him. You don't know anything about our family. I know enough, Daniel replied calmly. I know Sophia cries after every visit here. I know she has nightmares where she's invisible. I know she still, after everything, hopes you'll see her for who she is. And I know that hope is killing her slowly. Get out, my mother said coldly. Both of you, get out of my house. I looked around the room one last time, at the photos that didn't include me, at the parents who'd never seen me, at the brother who only cared about what I could give him. Gladly, I said. And don't contact me. Not until you can see me as more than a disappointment or a bank account. We left them there, in their museum of Alex's achievements, with their anger and their shock. The drive back to Boston was quiet. Daniel didn't try to fill the silence with platitudes, which I appreciated. I'm proud of you, he finally said as we crossed into the city limits. That couldn't have been easy. It was necessary, I replied. But it still hurts. I know. Back in our penthouse, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed incessantly with calls and texts from my family. Alex's messages alternated between rage and manipulation. My mother's voicemails were tearful guilt trips. My father sent a single text. We need to talk about this rationally. I blocked them all. The next morning, I went to my office early. The familiar hum of the markets, the clean logic of numbers, the straightforward nature of profit and loss it was all beautifully simple compared to the complexity of family dynamics. You look like hell. My business partner, James, observed when he arrived. Family stuff, I said. Finally told them? I'd confided in James years ago about my family situation. Yeah. And about what I expected. They're furious I didn't subsidize their lifestyle while they treated me like furniture. Good riddance, he said firmly. You've got a real family here. He was right. My team, my mentors, the network of professionals I'd built, they were the ones who celebrated my victories and supported me through challenges. They saw my worth because I'd proven it, not because of DNA. 2 weeks passed before my father showed up at my office building. Security called up, and I almost had them turn him away, but curiosity won. He looked older than I remembered, grayer. He sat across from my desk, taking in the panoramic view, the awards on the walls, the evidence of the success he'd never believed I could achieve. This is impressive, he said quietly. It's not Alex's corner office, but it'll do, I replied. He flinched. I deserve that. We didn't handle things well. That's an understatement. Your mother is devastated. She hasn't stopped crying. She's mourning the daughter she thought she had, the mediocre one who would always be grateful for scraps. That's not fair, isn't it? I leaned back in my chair. Tell me, Dad, without looking at your phone, what's my middle name? His silence was answer enough. It's Beatrice, I said. After Grandma, the only person in our family who ever believed I was worth investing in. We made mistakes, he admitted. Alex was easier. He demanded attention, and you were so self-sufficient. We thought you didn't need us. Every child needs their parents. I just learned to stop expecting what you wouldn't give. Can we fix this? I don't know, I said honestly. Trust takes years to build and seconds to destroy. You had 32 years to see me. Why should I believe you can now? Because we want to try. Do you? Or do you want access to my money? His jaw tightened. That's unfair. Is it? When was the last time you called me before you knew about my success? When did you last visit? What do you even know about my life? More silence. Here's what I'm willing to offer, I said. Individual therapy for you and Mom. Family therapy for all of us. No discussions of money whatsoever. No guilt trips about not sharing my wealth. No comparing me to Alex. You meet me as I am, or not at all. Alex is struggling with this, he said carefully. He feels betrayed. Alex has felt entitled to everything his whole life. My success isn't his failure, though I'm sure he sees it that way. He's always been competitive. There was never a competition, Dad. You'd already decided he won before I was even born. He left with my terms, looking older and smaller than the titan of disapproval I'd built up in my mind. I didn't expect to hear from them again. But my mother surprised me. She called a month later from a therapy appointment, her therapist gently guiding the conversation. It was awkward and painful, but she was trying. We started with monthly video calls, carefully neutral topics, slowly building something new from the ashes of what we'd had. Alex was a different story. He escalated from angry messages to social media posts about family loyalty and people who forget where they came from. When that didn't work, he tried a different tactic. He showed up at a charity gala I was attending, having somehow gotten himself on the guest list. He cornered me by the bar, his smile sharp as a knife. Sister, he said loudly enough for others to hear. Fancy seeing you here. Alex. I kept my voice neutral. I didn't realize strategic initiatives included charity work. Oh, I'm between positions right now, he said casually, but I caught the tension in his jaw. Exploring new opportunities. Hey, since we're both here, maybe we could talk about investment possibilities? I have some ideas that could benefit from your expertise. I don't mix family and business, I said firmly. Family? His laugh was bitter. That's rich coming from you. Family helps family, Sophia, but I guess you wouldn't understand that. I understand perfectly. I also understand that help and enabling are different things. Excuse me. I walked away, but he followed. You can't run from this forever. From us. We're your family. No, I said, turning to face him. Family shows up. Family celebrates your wins and supports your losses. Family sees you. You only see me now because I have something you want. You're so selfish, he hissed. Do you know what my life has been like? The pressure of being the successful one, and all this time you were... Stop. I interrupted. Your struggles aren't my fault or my responsibility. You had every advantage, every opportunity, every ounce of our parents' faith. What you did with that is on you. I left him there, standing among the glittering crowd with his entitlement and his anger. Later, I learned he'd been laid off months ago, his lifestyle unsustainable without the corporate salary. The house in Wellesley was in foreclosure. The Audi had been repossessed. His wife had left him when the money ran out. Part of me felt sorry for him. The golden child discovering his shine was just reflected light. But mostly, I felt free. Daniel and I got married the following spring. A small ceremony with our chosen family, the people who'd earned their place in our lives. My parents attended, still navigating the complex process of seeing me as I am. They'd made progress, but trust would take time. I started a scholarship fund for first-generation college students studying finance, named after Grandma B. Every year, I met with the recipients, sharing the lessons she'd taught me about compound interest and self-worth growing at the same rate. The penthouse felt different now, lighter somehow. The weight of pretense was gone, replaced by the freedom of authenticity. I'd spent so long performing for an audience that would never applaud, I'd almost forgotten who I was without the mask. One evening, as Daniel and I watched the sunset paint Boston Harbor gold, my phone rang. Alex's number appeared on the screen. I'd unblocked it months ago, more from indifference than forgiveness. "What do you want, Alex?" His voice was different, smaller. I wanted to apologize. I waited. "I've been in therapy," he continued, "working through some things. I realized I was so focused on being the favorite, I never questioned whether it was worth it. Whether the pressure was worth it. Whether losing my sister was worth it. And it wasn't. None of it was. I'm sorry, Sophia. For all of it. For not protecting you when we were kids. For taking advantage of their favoritism instead of calling it out. For being so threatened by your success that I couldn't just be proud of you." They were words I'd never expected to hear. "I appreciate that. I'm not asking for money," he added quickly. "I'm not asking for anything. I wanted you to know, and to say that I see you now, the real you, and she's pretty amazing." "Thank you," I said quietly. "That means something. Maybe someday we could grab coffee? Start over? Not as the golden child and the invisible one, but just as Alex and Sophia?" "Maybe," I said. "Someday." I hung up and turned to Daniel. That was unexpected. "People can change," he said. "When they lose enough, sometimes they find themselves." I thought about that as the sun dipped below the horizon. Loss and discovery, invisibility and recognition, the price of being seen versus the cost of hiding. In the end, maybe that's what family was. Not the people who shared your DNA, but the ones who saw you clearly and chose to stay. My phone buzzed with a text from one of my scholarship recipients, excited about her first internship. Another from James about a promising new investment opportunity. One from my mother, a simple, "thinking of you" that would have meant nothing before but now felt like progress. I turned off the phone and leaned into Daniel's warmth. For the first time in my life, I felt truly visible, not because of my success or my wealth, but because I'd finally stopped trying to be seen by people looking in the wrong direction. The girl who'd stood alone at the science fair, holding a ribbon no one celebrated, was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd learned that the only approval that mattered was her own. And that, more than any amount in my portfolio, was the real return on investment. Grandma B was right. When you have choices, you get to choose your life. I'd chosen to bet on myself, and the dividends were still coming in.